I woke up this morning with the idea immediately in my head of the expression namaste, which, depending on who you talk to, either means the light in me recognizes the light in you, or the soul or divine in me recognizes the soul or divine in you. And I don't know why this was the first thought I had as soon as I opened my eyes, but I feel like I'm somewhat of the opposite of that. Like the shadow in me recognizes the shadow in you. And that thought really ties into the topic that I want to talk about this week, which is your own shadow work, and specifically doing it as a practice related to how other people trigger you. Hi, welcome back to the podcast. I'm your host, Naomi, and this is Mosaic in Progress. I would like to continue, I think it's been 3 or 4 episodes now, with a recommendation at the beginning. My recommendation this week is that you follow Caitlin Shetler Poetry. That is Kaitlin Shetler Poetry. I follow her on Facebook. I'm not sure what all platforms that she is on, but she is a writer and a poet who talks extensively and writes very poignant poems about her deconstruction from the church. I believe she went to the Church of Christ, if I remember correctly. But she writes a lot of really great things, and you should follow her. On the day of this recording, we are one day out from the full moon. It was the wind moon, the pink moon of the year. And yesterday, Venus finally went direct. So there are no more planets in retrograde. Everything is back to its normal self. So you're going to have to take responsibility for your own reactions now. I say that tongue-in-cheek because a lot of people like to blame things on the retrogrades and the planets and the moon and things like that. And my goal in bringing this up is never to give you an excuse for your behavior, but to give you a reason to dive into it and a trajectory of inquiry into your own patterns and behaviors. So speaking of that, I had a dream a couple of nights ago, and it was one of the most intense dreams that I've ever had in my life. And it's not something that I would normally share on this podcast, but because of the nature of it, and because of the way that it ties into this topic, I'm going to share it with you. So, as soon as I woke up, I immediately knew what the dream was referencing, which is very rare for me. Normally, I have very weird and symbolic dreams, and I'll sit all day going, what does this mean? That did not happen in this case. And as soon as I woke up, I typed the whole thing out and I sent it to several people because I was like, other people need to know this for some reason. So I'm just going to read you what I wrote down. The first thing that I noted was that as I was dreaming it, I had the thought that I had dreamed it before, or I had been there, the place in the dream before, that it felt familiar. But my dream, I'll just read it. I was in this house, and people said the house was haunted or possessed, but it was sentient, and it would make people crazy. It would take over them. They'd lose control of their speech, sometimes lose the ability to speak. It was a huge house on the inside, but looked small on the outside. It was decorated in early mid-century style. It was sort of a museum. People would walk through it and come out changed. They'd be really mean after. So I was sitting with my whole family on a balcony near the house, and we were all sitting around talking about the house, and I wasn't nervous or uncomfortable around my family. I had the power, and I knew that. I was my age now, but I looked like I did in my early teens. As we were sitting there, a crow flew by, and I called out to it, "Hey, pretty bird." Side note, this is what I do to crows all the time. And it changed directions and headed toward me, and I kept calling out to it, and it came and landed on my knees. And for some reason, no one thought to get a picture, so I had to ask them. And I was petting it and talking to it, and I noticed its beak was broken off about halfway down. So I said, "Oh, what happened to your beak?" And it said, "The house did it. The house changes you. It wants to change you. It has to, or it can't survive. And if it can't change you, it will it will do everything it can to destroy you." And I said, "I'm a witch. I'm putting an end to this." So I went in the house and took someone with me. As we were going in the house, I looked at the house on the other side of the one that we were in, and I saw a local musician who I know in real life going into the house next door. I tried to wave at him, but he wouldn't even look. And in my dream, I knew it was because he was protecting himself from the house by ignoring its existence. Once we got inside, I saw him through the windows and saw how everything he did, he avoided looking at it. And the crow flew by the window, and I waved and called out, but it wouldn't look either. And I realized that any involvement with the house at all, even looking at it or acknowledging it, caused pain. And it was almost like a maze or fun house inside, and we could feel something moving inside the house. We knew it was coming for us, and we got sort of walled off in shutting doors, trying to keep it out. And I started trying to speak against it, and my voice was being taken from me. It was like muffled and quiet, and I felt like I was having a stroke or something because it was sort of slurred and garbled. And I realized then it was the house, not something inside the house. And I managed to get my words out, though they were much weaker than I wanted. And I rushed back to the center part of the house where it seemed the most safe and shut the doors as I was going, and I said, "It's the house. It's not a ghost. It's the house. The crow was right. We're going to have to bring it down. All of it." And I knew we'd have to bring it down from the inside, and that would mean we'd have to die too. And then I woke up and immediately thought, the house is this country. So, the thing that I really want to bring to light about that very visceral and disturbing dream is the part about being silenced, the voice being taken away, and the crow with its beak chopped halfway off. And there is a triggering aspect, there's many triggering aspects of the current political climate, and one of the biggest ones is feeling silenced or feeling like your voice doesn't matter. This is a pattern in our country. I mean, we can't pretend that it's not at this point with any kind of integrity. That since the foundation of this country as the nation that it is, since before then, really, we have silenced those who were not in the majority, those who we did not feel were worthy of having a voice, whether it was women or the enslaved Africans who were brought over, or the natives of the land that we took over, or just people who didn't own property. We have made a habit of silencing people in this country. And one of the things that really has stood out to me during this recent Mercury retrograde that has ended now finally, as I have been examining my own patterns, is that we have this kind of natural reaction when we feel silenced or feel like our voice doesn't matter, even if we can speak, is that we just get more vocal. If we feel like no one's listening to us, we get louder. If we feel like our voice doesn't matter, we talk more. And I'm not necessarily saying that that's a bad thing, but I'm not really saying it's a good thing either. I think it's very situation dependent. And that's something that I've had to deal with in my own life. With the current political climate, I have become so much more vocal about politics than I have been in over a decade. And I realize that it's because I feel like I'm being silenced. I feel like my voice doesn't matter. And I'm not saying that my feelings are invalid or not based in reality, but my method of speaking out has thus far been only effective in letting other people know that they're not the only ones who feel like that. I've had coworkers who I'm friends with on social media come up to me and express gratitude for it. I know I'm not changing the world by posting things on social media, but I don't want to allow myself to be silenced. And I spend a lot of time calling out the lies and the illegal things that are happening and crying out against the injustices. And I feel just as powerless, if I'm being honest. And it reminds me of so many situations I've been in with bullies. And this is a really uncomfortable topic to talk about because when you talk about it in a very realistic way, it sounds like you're silencing the people who are the victims. Because when you tell your story, when you scream out your side of the story, you sound like you're gossiping. And I have been on that side. And if it's uncomfortable to talk about, we need to talk about it. And so we're talking about it today. Because correcting lies sounds like gossip. And when you say that, people say, you're just silencing the victim. I was the victim. I'm talking about myself. I sounded like a mean, bitter gossip for years. Because let's just get into it. So I had this experience at work. Not recently. This has been years ago. I had this charge nurse who decided she hated me. I have theories about why. Those really don't matter. She could not stand me, and she was an absolute bully to me every time that I had to work with her, to the point of putting patients at risk and hurting patients just to hurt me, causing safety issues with patients because she disliked me so much. She wanted to see me fail and she didn't care if patients got hurt in the process. And I went to management, I went to HR, and no one would do anything about her. And she was such a bully to me that every day that I went home from working with her, I thought about killing myself. And every day that I had to go to work, that I knew she was going to be there, I thought about killing myself instead of going into work. It was that bad that I thought suicide was a better option than dealing with where we were at. And my now best friend got me a job on a different unit, the one that she worked on, to get me away from that situation. But I don't know what would have happened if she had not done that. My response to that situation and everything that happened was to talk shit about her all over the hospital once I got out of that unit. I told any and everyone who would listen what she had done to me and how she had treated me. And you think, well, she shouldn't have done that. She asked for that. No one heard that story and really thought worse of her, but I certainly lessened my credibility by doing what I did. I did the same thing with an ex-best friend who physically assaulted me, and I had to move to another. I was living with her. She physically assaulted me. I had to move out because I wasn't safe around her anymore, and we're no longer friends. Every one of our mutual acquaintances heard about that. I did not keep silent. I made sure everyone knew. And lost a lot of friends in the process. And maybe those friends needed to be lost. But that's the reality of the situation. I dealt with this with my husband's exes, who caused a lot of drama for me and did a lot of spreading lies and rumors about me. And when I had done nothing to them, and my response to that was to make sure everyone knew my side of the story, which made me look just as petty as them. And certainly didn't garner me any allies on my side. It made me look just like they were, spreading lies and rumors. Because if people are talking about you behind your back, whether it's true or not, what does that say about them that they're talking about you behind your back? And I feel that way sometimes about my childhood and this podcast specifically. Like, am I that person again? Am I just, screaming to anyone who will listen about how badly I was treated? And it's something that I struggle with a lot because I do feel that way sometimes about this as I talk about my childhood and the things that I was put through, specifically by my parents, especially by my dad. But the thing about this podcast is that the purpose of it is not for me to tell everyone how terrible my parents were. I think most of the people who listen to this podcast don't even know who my parents are. But to share with people my experiences and how I have healed from them or am working through healing from them so that they can also find healing. The point of me talking about the charge nurse who was a bully or my husband's exes or my ex-best friend was so that I could be the good guy and everyone would know that. And there's a huge difference between those two things. And it feels right. It feels justified in the moment. I was lied about. I was wronged. I'm going to scream it from the rooftops because I didn't get justice. I deserved justice and I didn't get it. And so everyone's going to hear my side of the story. And it doesn't bring you justice. It doesn't bring you allies. No one drags someone into the, town square and puts them in some kind of trial and makes them pay for their wrongs. You just look just as desperate and just as petty and just as gossipy as whoever wronged you. And this is the thing that I am coming to grips with, is the power of silence and owning your story. And my husband is just my absolute hero when it comes to this. He is the absolute ruler of just owning his story and choosing the narrative. This doesn't need a response from me mentality is how he lives his life. He dealt with some horrible things from his exes, both during the relationship and during the breakup. He has never once publicly talked about what they did to him or made his side of the story known. He let them say whatever they wanted to say. And he said, the people who care, the people who are supposed to be with me, will stay with me. If they don't, they're not meant for me. Because people who know me know my character and what I'm like. And the people who know me, who might question whether or not this was real, will ask me. And if they don't, they weren't supposed to be with me anyway. And he has such a calm about it. It is truly inspirational to watch. That he is able to just say, it's not my place. It's not my place to tell everyone what she did. He said those words, it's not my place to tell everyone what she did. And I feel like I take that on myself so much. It's my place to tell my story. I want my story known. I want the truth known. And in doing so, the truth really isn't known. It just looks like two people with a lot of drama who don't know how to act like grown-ups. And every time that I find myself in this situation, I don't feel like a grown-up. I feel like 13-year-old me again, being bullied. Who didn't have a voice. Who no one cared what I had to say when I did have a voice. Who was just beaten down repeatedly. And watched everyone taking the side of the person beating me down. It's hard not to want to speak out against those injustices, those personal injustices, when you have no other recourse. Maybe the courts won't do anything. Maybe your parents won't do anything. Whatever the situation is or the case may be, when those institutions that should be ensuring justice do not. And you're left with pain and no recourse. It is a natural thing to want to make sure everyone knows what really happened to you. But that's not where the power is. The power is not in just smearing someone's name all over town. Now everyone knows what a terrible person they are. The power is in holding your story sacred. The power is in turning the other cheek. There's a reason that Jesus says this. That it's not striking back where you have the power. It's in turning the other cheek. Someone hits you, you turn the other cheek to them. That means hit me again. that means go ahead. Because if people are standing around and they watch someone hit you and you hit them back, then it's just a fight between two people. If someone hits you and you stand there and do not answer their violence with violence, their pettiness with pettiness, their lies with screaming horrible things about them they don't want known, you're the one with the power. Everyone sees that you're the one that's remaining calm, that you're the one that's not answering back. And in the arena of public opinion, because that's what we're talking about, this is where you have the power. Not in making sure everyone knows how horrible they are, but in not responding in kind. And I think that we see this play out a lot, or rather the not healed part of it, in online comments. It's so easy to just get that trigger and snap back a reply. Someone says something really rude. My husband has a relative who has just suddenly made it a hobby of commenting very rude and disrespectful and borderline incoherent things on everything that I post on social media. And it's really easy to fall into that trap of just clapping back. And not just him. There's, whether it's on a random page that you make a comment on or somebody else's profile that you've commented something on, whatever it is. It's so easy to fall into that. Well, I'm going to clap right back. What does that actually do? We feel much superior when we do it. Oh yeah, told them. Well, you haven't convinced the person that you're talking against, that's for sure. Because no one gets convinced to change their mind that way. You haven't shown everyone your moral or intellectual superiority with your arguments. Because, I mean, you see online comments, the quality of the arguments that come back, regardless of how valid your point. You're not showing solidarity with anyone else. It's just more dehumanization. It's just more of our egos playing rather than seeing people as human and acting as human ourselves. We just want to be the one who says the wittiest thing, the most cutting thing that just silences someone. And I feel like social media has just become the thing that is the catalyst for destroying society. Society was supposed to be about collaboration and cooperation and compromise for mutual benefit. And social media has taken that and polarized us in a way that I have not seen us polarized before, and given us this false sense of numbers to where, because of the way algorithms work, we feel we're in the majority, or depending on what we specifically need for our victim mentality, we feel we're in the minority. And regardless of whether we feel we're in the majority or the minority, we certainly feel empowered and justified in fighting against those who are different with the most vile of language, the most dehumanizing language, and the most disrespectful attitudes. We wouldn't speak to people like this in person, and if we would, we need to really examine ourselves and what we stand for. Finding your voice shouldn't mean using it to hurt others. I named this episode Mirrored Shadows because the whole thing with the namaste that I mentioned at the beginning is that we're all supposed to be mirrors to each other and of each other. And I think we see this playing out in our country, that we are mirroring our shadows to each other. We see these wounded little kids in each other, but we don't see it as that. We simply react to it. That we're all just wounded little kids on the playground, fighting for the best toy. And rather than just playing with each other, we see each other as enemies. And we make sure that we are, whether we really were or not. The power in finding your voice is in using it for good, is in using it to speak truth, but not everything that is true needs to be said. It might be true that someone, has a yeast infection, but not everybody needs to hear that. I hope that you will join me on this journey of allowing that wounded child or that wounded teenager within you to just be held and cry. To let her or him vent in the safe space. And teach them the true power of their words. It's a hard thing to learn, especially when you've been wronged a lot, because it's very hard to deny the justice, the justification of telling the truth when you have been lied about. But that is not where power lies. True power lies in holding yourself accountable for your words and the effects of them. May we all find our true power and use our voices in the most powerful way that we can. Thank you for joining me again this week. I hope you will join me next week on the podcast as we both continue to work on our mosaic in progress.